Hi, welcome to Golden Years. I'm Lori Betts. This month, my special guest is Nick North. He created Happy Landings, and he's going to explain to us how it all began. So come on back.
We need a claim number?
When I started taking care of Mom, I didn't realize the challenge of playing so many roles. But above all, I'm still her daughter.
Visit aarp.org/caregiving. We're here to help.
You make me wear my bike helmet. You taught me never to run with scissors. And to follow the swimming rules.
You tell me to stay away from drugs.
To always buckle my seatbelt.
So why do you keep a loaded gun in your drawer?
How safe is that?
You asked them to follow some safety rules. Now they're asking you. In fact, they're counting on you. Never let your gun get into the wrong hands. Remember, always lock it up. Visit ncpc.org.
Welcome back to Golden Years. I am Lori Betts, and I am interviewing Nick North from Happy Landings. Nick, thank you so much for joining me this month.
Happy to be here.
I want to know how this baby of yours, Happy Landings, was created. And
Good.
What is a little bit of your background?
Good question. I had a long career in international business that took me all over the world, and at a certain point in my life, I decided I really wanted to get out of airplanes and find a new career that would anchor me in my community, which is Medina, and which I love very much. And so I had an interest in seniors because my mother was, I was her only child, and in New Hampshire, and needing a lot of my attention and a lot of my help, and I was almost commuting there from time to time. But I decided I wanted to make a career of working in the senior market, and my first attempt was to get a nursing home administrator's license, and I did that. I did my internship, and I passed my tests, and I did take several jobs in long-term care administration over the course of several years. But what I found was that I was getting job opportunities, but they weren't necessarily in Medina County. They were in Indianapolis or somewhere the other side of Cleveland or whatever, and that just didn't seem right. So it was kind of an evolution where I decided, well, a way that I can really help people is in real estate, and because I was experiencing all this with my own mother, and the issue of getting her to leave her large colonial farmhouse in a small town in New Hampshire, making the proper decisions about where she should go. And
they're not moving. They're going to stay in that house forever.
Absolutely. I want to be in my house, and I'm never going to move. And so a difficult process. And as I would visit her back there, it came upon me that it would be nice to have somebody that I could turn to as my representative, if you will, in that little community. Of course, a lot of people would say, well, we'll help, but you know, you really can't organize that very well from afar. So,
well, let me ask you this. In your experience when you went to New Hampshire, did you make any phone calls while you were there in their community to say, what is here to help? Were you searching for help for Mom?
Oh,
then?
yes.
And how did you?
I was.
A brick
I
wall,
remember once I went to her church, and I actually spoke to the entire congregation, and out of that, a lot of people would come up and say, yeah, well, I can help, and I can do this and that. But when you started to try to piece that all together in a way where it would cover the basis for my mother, it didn't really work very well. So ultimately, the choice that we made was for her to move to an assisted living place in Concord, which is the capital of New Hampshire, and it was a better place for her initially because she did have cousins and good friends who were able to visit her quite frequently in that area, as opposed to bringing her out here at that time. But my point is that it was useful to have it would have been useful to have somebody that I could go to and just say, here's what I'm dealing with, and I didn't. So it was kind of on my own. A lot of people eager to help, but all little pieces of it, but not anybody putting it together for me from a remote.
And you're miles away.
Yeah. So anyway, I tried my hand at long-term care administration, which was not easy for a lot of reasons, but it wasn't giving me the opportunities to stay anchored in Medina. So,
And you were still in the corporate world too.
well, I was moving out of the corporate world. But
That's what was
yeah,
your goal.
yeah.
Yes.
So anyway, make a long story short, I really felt that getting into real estate was a way where I could do things that would encompass a lot of that, where I could focus on people who were in the process of downsizing or making decisions, or with their caregivers, making decisions like I was making back in New England, and helping them make these decisions and make the moves. So I'm a realtor, and the ultimate goal for me, and to be quite frank, is to sell their house, if that's what's necessary. But from the time that I meet somebody until the time that actually a house is sold, could be years. It's been as much as 5 years.
It's a process.
It's a process, and in the meantime, I have been fortunate enough to develop good relationships and friendships with people, older people in our community who, and of course I'm older myself now,
Yeah.
so it's easy to relate, but and I find that I can do a lot for them short of actually putting their house on the market, and that's, I would consider it sort of a ministry for me, and something that I really enjoy a lot. And I mean, I've had an example, I've had a person come to me and say, you know, Nick, I know I need to move, but I don't know the right place. And it's amazing to me in this day and age that still people think in terms of rest homes, you know, and don't define all the other options that are out there. So
So with Happy Landings, do you like interview the person?
I do. I go in before I go and sit down with them or their caregivers. I just had a meeting with a whole family of children and their mother a few weeks ago, and it was a very preliminary process. They were looking for somebody to help knit things together so that they could come out in their own mind with a good idea of what they should be doing. And and I would say this, I have had situations where someone has said, I really need to move, and if I think, and I have enough experience in long-term care and just with seniors, if I think, well, maybe not, maybe there's a way for them to stay put. It's not so important to me to put my sign out in front of a house. It's more important to me to do the right thing for those people.
Well, you have a niche because we're both aging. Okay, so in my situation, I have a mother, a 94-year-old mother, and a 91-year-old mother-in-law, okay, and the business. And being at GTB, I can't tell you how many people come in the store stressed big time, stressed, because they don't know how they're going to deal with mom or dad to say it's time to make a move. I mean, and I know there's many people stressed out there. And it's a hard situation. So you need that individual who's going to step into the situation once removed to try to help them make a decision.
Exactly. Sometimes they need this sort of a third party to say this is what you need to be doing, because they can't really come to the conclusion. There's too many dynamics going on in the relationships of a family where it really helps to have somebody.
Definitely, definitely.
But again, my goal ultimately from a business standpoint is to be able to sell their house if that's what's required. And so leading up to that, of course, there's a lot of things that have to be done, decisions that have to be made, and of course this is not a lot different from what other realtors would do, but of course the first thing I face often, especially with an older couple who's lived in their house for a long time, is getting the house ready and getting the closets emptied out and the attics emptied out and the basement. I mean, I remember a home out in Litchfield where you went, it had a full basement, but you couldn't tell really, you couldn't see the walls of the basement because there was so much inside on the floor.
There's stuff they collected for years and they needed it.
Right, and everything, people's treasures are often not worth a great deal now. So that's one area where I really, I think I can be very helpful in figuring out what to do with the stuff. And I have a number of people that I work with who range from somebody who will actually give them some money for what they have for these treasures, and I have a young man in Talmadge who actually has a second-hand store on West Avenue and an auction barn in South Akron, and so he comes and makes the calculation, well, it would probably sell better on the floor of my store, or maybe it should be in the auction, but he decides that. He ideally gives the my client money right on the spot, and he says, I'll make it go away, is the expression he uses. And that's very helpful. Of course, a lot of people don't ever understand that this is more of a service than a money-making opportunity for them, but usually there's some money obviously is given to the seniors. Then I happen to know what types of organizations take different kinds of things for donations, and some won't take any bedding or mattresses, others will. I know Salvation Army will take frozen meat as long as it's less than a year old. Yeah.
Well, that's interesting. Interesting.
Yeah. And community services, of course. I mean, they all have little niches. So I know the appropriate places. And like with this couple I mentioned out west of Medina, every time I went out to visit them, I'd take something more especially for the donation type things. Obviously the hospice store is a place that
Bingo.
That is very
and
good.
I often say that there's such collaboration in Medina County for the seniors that there's always a go-to person that you could help get the answer or get the job done.
Yeah. And then at the end of the line, there's when you've sold what you can, when you've donated what you can, then the end of that is trash and trash out, and you know that there are things that are not going to be useful to anybody, and then there's another person I go to that takes care of that too. So
then you probably walk the person through all the steps.
Exactly. I sit down, just try to, of course I look at the house and figure out what it would need to be put on the market most effectively. But again, like I've said, in some cases it's even before that. I don't know that I can stay here, but what should I be doing? And then I'm really trying to help them make that decision. Mm-hmm. So many times I've driven clients around
to assisted living,
looking at places, and helped them to decide what kind of accommodation is appropriate. And if I have any doubts, then of course there are resources that I can turn to where the person can be assessed, and we figure out really if it is appropriate for them to move out, or whether there's a way that they can stay successfully in their home. But
okay, hold that thought. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to come right back, and we're going to hear more of what Happy Landings can offer.
Hi, I'm Ed Zachary with Medina County Veterans Service Office. And if you're a veteran and you're in a crisis, or worse yet, contemplating suicide, I want you to pick up the phone and call the Veterans Crisis Line at 1-800-273-8255. Do it now.
You're watching The Bat.
Hey, did you know that 2.4 million loving cats and dogs in shelters and rescues need our help to find a home? Go to theshelterpetproject.org and search your local shelters and rescues. Go for a cuddle with your next best friend. Adopt.
Are your children in the right car seat for their age and size? Is the seat supposed to be forward-facing or rear-facing? Did they move to a booster seat too soon? It may be too late to check when you're on the road. Fortunately, you're on the couch. Car crashes are a leading killer of children 1 to 13. Don't think you know. Know you know.
Hi, welcome back to Golden Years. I'm interviewing Nick North from Happy Landings, and he is giving us some tips on what to do with the senior home when we're trying to get it ready to sell. So Nick, in your opinion, do you sell the house as is? Do you do the paint job? Do you remodel? What do you suggest to a senior?
Oh, the major thing, and we talked about it before, is decluttering and getting rid of all the things that there can be of no use to the person when they move out, probably of no interest to the families.
True.
I used to say my mother would not have one of anything if 6 weren't just as good. So I can't tell you the number of sets of china and stuff that I had to deal with. And I've had people here in Medina who have these exhaustive collections of dolls and Yadro
QVC
stuff, and it's just not. It may have meant a lot to them, but and usually with something like that, I suggest taking a few of the things, but kissing the rest goodbye.
Because when you walk into the house, you want the house presentable for the buyer to say, "Hey, maybe."
Exactly.
Maybe
you have to. You have to allow them to be able to see what the house really could look like with their things in. So actually, that's something that comes up sometimes: is should we move everything out? And I say no, because it's good to have a certain amount of furniture to define the room, basically, so people can go in, and maybe it's not as much as the person that had initially living there, but it's enough to say, oh yeah, that's a dining room, and our set would fit there, or the study, we can move this and there. But to see a blank space is hard to see that unless you have something there. So if we can do it, I try to keep people from moving everything out before they move out.
But on the flip side, let me interrupt you. For my mother-in-law's condo in North Royalton, we had it painted. So we got a lot of the furniture. Well, we moved her to her assisted living. So the rooms were empty, so we said that's the perfect time to paint it. We left the dining room table there. So we figured when they walk through, they could figure out what rooms are what rooms, the bedrooms, bathroom. And I think they were able to vision where they could put their furniture and if it was a good tie for them.
Sure.
So that's the flip side. So
well, you don't. All I'm saying is you don't want a completely empty room, because you need something to help define the room for the person.
Correct.
Now, if getting to making changes in a lot of seniors have wallpaper. I mean, I have wallpaper in a few of our rooms.
I do too in the hallway.
Or shag carpet or something or I've seen bathrooms that are, pink and green and turquoise and things like that. But even so, as long as there's not something damaged, like a hole in the wall or a leak in the roof, then I just say let it go. And of course you you're not going to put a lot of money into fixing it up, and that means you're going to sell it as is, basically.
Correct. And people have different likes, different
And there are
tastes.
ways that you can give allowances to a buyer so they can do some of that themselves, and that makes them feel that they will have the resources to be able to do that once they move in. But no, generally speaking, other than the decluttering, and Lord knows I've had to really struggle with people who just won't let go of their hundreds of China figurines and things, and I'm just saying, you got to get some of those out of there, and so people can really start to understand what the house is like. So.
Then with all your people that you're connected with, do you have a moving company that comes in and helps pack?
Oh, I do, yes. Once we've decided where the person is going, there's a combination of working with the place where my client is moving to set things in their new apartment or whatever it is. And then on the other side of it, of course, I work with the movers. And that's perhaps a good point, is when I use outside people, whatever it is, a little bit of repair or taking limbs off the roof or whatever, I'm always there to make the first introduction between my client and this third party, because I want to be sure that they're comfortable with the person.
Especially in today's world.
Very much so. So, especially, I was telling you about the young man from the Akron area. I'm always there when he comes to meet the client, because it's just really important to, I think, have that connection, introduction.
And start a relationship. Yeah.
And so, as I've said, I've worked with some people. I met a lady in Brunswick. I think I knew her for 5 or 6 years before she finally made the decision that she needed to move. And obviously I wasn't pushing her. Again, I can't emphasize enough, I'm not so desperate to get a listing in my real estate business that I'm going to push someone to do something that they're not ready for.
Well,
so it was a long process.
And you're taking an interest in Mrs. Jones and her family.
Right.
Because a lot of them will say, I need to have my children behind me, what's happening.
And in this particular case, there weren't children that were, there were children, but they weren't really involved at all. And they were on opposite sides of the country. And I really was her one contact here. And it was kind of a moving experience for me, being with her for so long and helping her make the decisions that she had to make. And so.
And do you get calls from out of state children?
I have had a few. It's a challenge. Well, I gave you the example of the people in Litchfield. That was a referral locally from, I guess, Office for Older Adults. But they knew about this situation where the one of the 4 children who lived in Boulder, Colorado, and the other 3 were local, but the one who had the interest and the devotion to her parents to try to help them was the one in Colorado. So we were put in touch with each other, and she had been commuting by car from Colorado every month or so.
Wow.
Well, she wasn't afraid of flying, but she had dogs that she didn't want to leave, so she brought the dogs with her.
That's a big chunk out of her life.
Exactly, and she would arrive in Litchfield and have almost always some sort of a crisis that she had to deal with. In that case, her mom had dementia, and her dad didn't have any problems, particularly other than the fact that he was having increasing difficulty managing the household. And so really what happened is that I wound up being her main eyes and ears in the ongoing management of her relationship with her parents until we finally found the right decision for them. So.
And you have a niche, you have a needed niche.
Yeah.
Because like I said earlier, I mean, if the kids are involved, there's so much, only so many hours in a day, you're going on with your life, and then you have mom and dad. And even a spouse, if a spouse is trying to decide what we're gonna do with the husband because he's declining, I mean, there is so much that you have to take care of and decisions have to be made.
Right.
To have the outsider step in and help is a godsend.
Oh. And again, I do feel like it's more of a, I'm in it more for what it does for me rather, you know, yes, at the end of the line, there's a commission check, but it's not, that's not what it's all about, because that gets deferred for years sometimes until the time is right. And I just, it gives me a lot of pleasure to be able to help in that way.
Nick, thank you for joining me on my show this month.
Pleased.
What good piece of advice would you like to leave with the viewers?
Well, we're all going to face this in our lives, and the extent to which we can foresee the need ultimately to leave the home we've lived in for 30, 40, 50 years perhaps, and know that that's going to happen, and try to figure out the best exit and the right way to do it, I think is something that you can't start thinking about at the last moment. It often happens, but it's best to be able to plan for it and move along gradually. I never go to the basement where my wife doesn't say, bring something up we can throw away. I mean, that's the kind of thing you have to do.
Ooh, I like that idea.
So, and I think where I can help is really putting it all together, having people understand the decisions that are going to have to be made, not high pressure, like I say, could take years before we get to the ultimate goal, but the more that you can start thinking about it and doing incremental things to prepare for it, I think the better it's going to be. And then I'm somebody who can kind of put that all in focus for them and move things along step by step, so it's not a crisis for them. So.
And that being said, I did hear on the radio this past week that we plan everything. We plan the graduations, the weddings, we even plan our funerals. But you don't plan where I'm going to go from the home to whether it's going to be independent living, assisted living, or with your children. And I guess that's a big gap right now.
Yeah, very important.
So you did give us some good tips, Nick, so I appreciate that. So thank you for joining us this month. Happy spring. So come on back next month.
Welcome to Understood.org, a free online resource for parents of kids with learning and attention issues, with personalized recommendations, tools, and expert advice.